Katie Walsh pressed her face against the small window of the transport ship. She had never seen anything like what waited ahead. Kepler Station hung in space like a giant crystal, its walls shining with blue and purple light. The station was huge. Katie counted at least 50 levels, each one bigger than any building back on Earth. "Hard to believe we made it this far," said Jake Morrison from the seat next to her. He was looking at the same view, but his eyes showed worry instead of wonder. Katie nodded. 6 months ago, she was studying languages at a small college in Ohio. Now she was about to enter the most advanced school in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had built Kepler Station to teach the best students from across known space. For the first time ever, they had agreed to let humans join. The selection process had been brutal. Earth sent its smartest people to compete for just 12 spots. Katie got chosen because she could learn new languages faster than anyone had ever seen. Jake earned his place by solving engineering problems that had stumped experts for years. But even now, riding toward their new school, Katie wondered if they belonged here. "Attention, human passengers," came a voice over the ship's speakers. The words sounded cold and sharp. "Prepare for docking. You will follow all station rules without question. Any failure to comply will result in immediate removal." Jake and Katie looked at each other. The other species on the ship had received much nicer welcome messages. The ship shook as it connected to the station. Katie grabbed her single bag of belongings and followed Jake toward the exit. The other passengers were already gone. Most of them looked like walking trees with silver bark. A few resembled giant butterflies with metal wings. Katie had studied pictures of different alien species, but seeing them in person made her feel very small. They stepped off the ship into a long hallway. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft light. Everything looked clean and perfect. Too perfect. Katie felt like she was walking through a museum instead of a school. "Humans, follow me," said a voice behind them. They turned to see their first Zephyrian. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its body looked like it was carved from blue crystal, with long, thin arms and legs. Its head was shaped like a diamond, with 2 bright points of light where eyes should be. When it moved, Katie heard a sound like wind chimes. "I am Instructor Nyleth," the Zephyrian said. "I will show you to your living quarters. Do not speak unless spoken to." Katie wanted to ask 100 questions, but she kept quiet. She and Jake walked behind the instructor through endless hallways. Other students moved past them in groups, chatting in languages Katie did not recognize. None of them looked at the humans. It was like Katie and Jake were invisible. They passed classrooms with walls made of pure energy. Inside, students worked on problems that made Katie's head hurt just looking at them. Numbers and symbols floated in the air while students moved them around with their minds. One classroom had no floor at all. Students floated in empty space while building machines out of light. "Your species will struggle with most of our courses," Instructor Nyleth said without turning around. "Humans lack the mental capacity for advanced learning. You are here only because of political agreements between your world and ours." The words stung, but Katie said nothing. She had expected this kind of treatment. The other species in the galaxy saw humans as newcomers who had gotten lucky with space travel. Most aliens believed humans were too primitive to learn anything useful. They stopped at a section of the station that looked different from the rest. The walls here were plain metal instead of crystal. The lights were dimmer. Everything felt cheaper and older. "Human quarters," Nyleth announced. "You will stay in this section at all times when not in class. Meals are delivered twice per day. Do not leave this area without permission." The instructor led them to a small room with 2 beds and a tiny desk. Katie had seen prison cells that were bigger. Jake dropped his bag and sat on one of the beds. It was hard as rock. "Classes begin at dawn," Nyleth continued. "You will study basic mathematics, simple physics, and elementary language skills. Do not expect to advance beyond first-year courses. Most humans fail within the first month." With that, the instructor left. Katie and Jake were alone in their tiny room, listening to the hum of the station's machines. "Elementary language skills," Katie muttered. She spoke 7 Earth languages and had already learned 3 alien ones from the study materials. "They think we're children." Jake was examining the walls. "Look at this," he said, running his fingers along a crack. "This section is old. Really old. They stuck us in the worst part of the station." Katie walked to the small window. Outside, she could see the main part of Kepler Station. Those levels had gardens and open spaces. Students there had rooms 10 times bigger than this one. The message was clear. Humans were not welcome here. That night, Katie lay awake thinking about home. She missed her family. She missed food that actually tasted good. Most of all, she missed being around people who did not think she was stupid. Here, every alien she met looked at her like she was a talking animal that had learned a few tricks. Jake was having trouble sleeping too. Maybe we should have stayed on Earth, he whispered. Katie thought about that. It would be easy to give up and go home. No one would blame them. The other 10 humans in the program were probably having the same thoughts. But something inside Katie refused to quit. She had not come this far just to run away at the first sign of trouble. No, she said firmly. We earned our place here. We're going to prove them wrong. Jake smiled in the darkness. All right then. Let's show these crystal heads what humans can do. Neither of them knew how hard that would be. They had no idea what Commander Veltar had planned for them. They could not imagine the tests and humiliation waiting ahead. But they had each other, and they had something the aliens did not understand yet. They had the stubborn human refusal to give up, no matter how bad things got. Outside their window, Kepler Station continued its slow rotation around the distant star. Inside the crystal walls, other species studied and learned in comfort. But in the old section where humans were hidden away, Katie Walsh and Jake Morrison prepared for the fight of their lives. 3 weeks into their studies at Kepler Station, Katie Walsh realized the aliens had been lying about human abilities. The first day of language class had been a shock. While other students struggled with basic alien grammar, Katie absorbed new words like a sponge. Within hours, she was speaking better than aliens who had studied for months. The instructor, a bird-like creature named Sectar, stopped the lesson halfway through. How are you doing this? It asked Katie in front of the entire class. I don't know, Katie answered honestly. The patterns just make sense to me. The alien students in the room began whispering to each other. Some looked amazed. Others looked angry. Katie had broken their belief that humans were mentally slow. Jake was having similar success in engineering class. The professor had given all students a broken machine to fix. Most aliens spent days running tests and making calculations. Jake looked at it for 10 minutes, then reached inside and twisted something. The machine hummed to life. Impossible, said the professor. A blob-like creature covered in tentacles. Show me what you did. Jake explained his reasoning. He had noticed that one component was placed backwards. The design was supposed to be symmetrical, but the builders had made an error. While other students focused on complex theories, Jake had seen the simple problem hiding underneath. Word of these successes spread quickly through the station. Within days, every alien knew that the primitive humans were outperforming students from advanced civilizations. This news did not make Katie and Jake popular. Instead, it made them targets. Commander Veltar was the worst of their problems. The tall Zephyrian taught advanced physics and seemed to hate humans more than anyone else. During the first week, he had ignored Katie and Jake completely. Now he watched their every move with glowing eyes that showed pure disgust. Your success is meaningless, Veltar told Katie after she solved a difficult problem in class. Humans succeed through luck and accident, not intelligence. True understanding requires mental capacity your species lacks. Katie wanted to argue, but she had learned to stay quiet. Fighting with instructors would only make things worse. Instead, she focused on her work and tried to ignore the insults. But Veltar would not let things rest. He began implementing what he called corrective measures, designed to remind humans of their proper place. During lectures, he would ask Jake and Katie questions that were meant to be impossible. When they answered correctly, he would claim they had misunderstood the question. When they failed, he would use their mistakes as proof that humans did not belong at Kepler Station. The other human students were having an even harder time. Most of them were struggling with the advanced coursework. The alien math was based on completely different principles than Earth mathematics. Physics classes assumed knowledge that humans had never developed. Some students spent entire nights studying just to understand basic concepts. Tom Bradley, a human student from Texas, broke down crying during a chemistry lesson. The instructor had asked him to identify a compound that changed form every few seconds. Tom had never seen anything like it on Earth. When he admitted he was lost, the instructor made him stand in front of the class while explaining how inferior minds could not grasp basic science. Katie watched this happen and felt sick. These were Earth's smartest people, but the aliens treated them like children who could not learn simple lessons. The worst part was that some of the humans were starting to believe it. She could see doubt in their eyes. They were beginning to think maybe the aliens were right. Things got worse when Veltar introduced group projects. He put one human in each team with 3 or 4 alien students. The aliens were supposed to work together, but instead they used the projects as chances to humiliate their human teammates. During one assignment, Katie's team was supposed to design a new type of engine. Katie suggested an idea based on human engineering principles. Her alien teammates laughed at her proposal and refused to consider it. They spent weeks working on their own design, which failed completely during testing. When the professor asked what went wrong, the aliens blamed Katie for disrupting their thinking with primitive concepts. Jake's experience was similar. His team was building a communication device. Jake spotted several problems in their design early on, but his teammates ignored his warnings. When the device exploded during testing, they claimed Jake had sabotaged their work out of jealousy. The pattern was always the same. When human ideas worked, the aliens took credit or called it luck. When alien ideas failed, humans got blamed for causing problems. Katie began to realize this was not just prejudice. It was a systematic campaign to prove human inferiority. Commander Veltar was leading this campaign. He encouraged other instructors to make classes harder for human students. He created special tests designed to expose human weaknesses. He even changed dormitory assignments to separate humans from each other, making them feel more isolated. The pressure was getting to Katie. She had always been confident in her abilities, but constant criticism was wearing her down. She found herself second-guessing every answer and doubting her instincts. Sleep became difficult. Food had no taste. She spent hours staring at homework problems that should have been easy. Jake noticed the change in his friend. Katie had always been the stronger one emotionally, but now she looked tired and defeated. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. Her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. Jake tried to help, but he was fighting his own battles with alien instructors who seemed determined to break his spirit. The breaking point came during a theoretical physics examination. Veltar had designed the test to be nearly impossible, even for advanced alien students. The problems required knowledge from multiple fields and techniques that had never been taught in class. Most students would need hours just to understand what the questions were asking. Katie sat down at her desk and looked at the first problem. The symbols swam before her eyes. She had not slept in 2 days, surviving on caffeine and determination. Her brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton. Simple concepts that usually came naturally now seemed foreign and confusing. Around her, alien students worked steadily through the problems. They had advantages Katie lacked. Some could process information at superhuman speeds. Others could access vast databases of knowledge through mental implants. A few species could think in multiple dimensions that humans could not even imagine. Katie tried to focus, but the room started spinning. Her vision blurred. The words on the test paper began to fade. She reached for her water bottle with a shaking hand and knocked it over. The liquid spilled across her test, ruining her answers. That was when her body finally gave up. Katie slumped forward onto her desk, unconscious from exhaustion and stress. The crash of her fall echoed through the silent examination room. Jake was on his feet immediately, moving toward his friend. But Commander Veltar stepped into his path, blocking the way with one long crystalline arm. "Sit down," Veltar commanded. "Inferior species must learn independence or face extinction. She will receive no assistance." Jake stared at the alien instructor in shock. Katie was clearly sick and needed help, but Veltar would not allow anyone to touch her. Around the room, other students watched in uncomfortable silence. No one dared to challenge the commander's authority. Katie remained motionless on her desk while the test continued around her. Jake clenched his fists and returned to his seat, but his eyes never left his friend. Something dark and angry was building inside him, and he knew it would not stay buried much longer. 2 days after Katie collapsed during the physics exam, Commander Veltar announced a special project. All students would participate in a diplomatic simulation exercise. The test was designed to show how different species could work together to solve complex problems. Teams would negotiate a trade agreement between fictional star systems while dealing with political pressure and resource shortages. Katie had recovered from her collapse, but she still looked pale and weak. The medical staff had given her basic treatment and sent her back to classes within hours. No one seemed concerned about why a healthy young woman had fainted from exhaustion. The message was clear. Human problems were not important enough to investigate. This exercise will demonstrate true intelligence, Veltar announced to the assembled students. Success requires mental flexibility, strategic thinking, and cultural understanding. Species that lack these qualities will reveal their limitations. He divided the students into mixed teams of 6 members each. Katie found herself grouped with 2 Zephyrians, 2 Melikari tree beings, and 1 Threx insect creature. On paper, it looked like a strong team. The Zephyrians were known for logical thinking. The Melikari were experts at long-term planning. The Threx could process multiple conversations at once. Jake ended up on a different team across the room. Katie felt nervous without her friend nearby, but she was determined to prove human value to her teammates. The simulation began with each team receiving a complex scenario. Their fictional star system was running out of rare minerals needed for space travel. 3 other systems had these minerals, but wanted different things in return. Teams had 6 hours to negotiate agreements that would satisfy everyone involved. Katie immediately saw several possible solutions. Her language skills let her understand cultural nuances that others missed. She knew how to frame offers in ways that would appeal to different species' values and priorities. When she shared her ideas with the team, her alien teammates seemed impressed. The human has identified key leverage points, admitted Zekthor, one of the Zephyrians. Her proposal shows unexpected sophistication. For the first 3 hours, everything went well. Katie served as the team's primary negotiator, while her teammates handled technical calculations and resource management. They made steady progress toward a comprehensive agreement that would benefit all parties. But then things changed. During a break between negotiation rounds, Katie overheard her Zephyrian teammates talking in their native language. She had learned enough of their crystalline speech patterns to understand most of what they said. The humans' ideas are actually quite good, said Zekthor. That is the problem, replied the other Zephyrian, Melvash. If she succeeds, it will make our species look foolish. We cannot allow a primitive creature to outperform us. What do you suggest? We sabotage her proposals. Make small changes that will cause them to fail. When the simulation ends badly, we blame her lack of understanding. Katie felt her stomach drop. Her own teammates were planning to destroy their project just to make her look bad. She wanted to confront them, but that would reveal she understood their language. Instead, she pretended not to have heard anything. The sabotage began immediately when negotiations resumed. Every time Katie made a proposal, her teammates would suggest improvements that actually weakened their position. When other teams made counteroffers, the Zephyrians would accept terms that Katie knew were terrible deals. They were deliberately setting up their own team to fail. Katie tried to fix the damage without being obvious about it. She made new suggestions that worked around her teammates' sabotage, but the Zephyrians caught on to what she was doing and became more aggressive in their interference. Soon other teams began to notice that Katie's group was making inconsistent offers and contradicting themselves. By the final hour, their negotiations had collapsed completely. The other teams had stopped taking them seriously. Katie watched helplessly as months of preparation and hopes for human success crumbled around her. When time was called, Commander Veltar reviewed each team's results. Most groups had successfully negotiated complex agreements that satisfied multiple parties. Katie's team had achieved nothing. They had no trade deals, no resource agreements, and no diplomatic progress to show for 6 hours of work. Disappointing but predictable, Veltar announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. When primitive minds attempt advanced tasks, failure is inevitable. Katie's alien teammates nodded sadly, as if they genuinely regretted their human members' incompetence. The performance was so convincing that even Katie almost believed they were sincere. This exercise demonstrates an important lesson, Veltar continued. Intelligence cannot be faked or improvised. Either a species possesses the mental capacity for complex reasoning, or it does not. Today we have seen clear evidence of human limitations. The commander's words echoed through the great hall where all teams had been working. Hundreds of students from dozens of species listened as he explained how human involvement had contaminated an otherwise successful educational exercise. Katie felt every eye in the room focused on her. The shame was crushing. She had worked harder than anyone else, but all these aliens would remember was her failure. None of them would know about the sabotage. They would just see proof that humans could not handle advanced challenges. But Veltar was not finished. He gestured for Katie to approach the center of the hall. Come forward, human. You will serve as an example for all students. Katie's legs felt weak as she walked toward the commander. The great hall had been built to impress visitors with its size and grandeur. Crystal walls rose 50 feet overhead, covered with flowing alien script that told the history of galactic civilization. In the center of the floor was a circle of polished stone where important ceremonies took place. Veltar positioned himself in the middle of this circle, his tall crystalline form casting sharp shadows under the overhead lights. Katie stopped at the edge of the circle, unsure what was expected of her. "Students of Kepler Station," Veltar announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Today you have witnessed the consequences of misplaced charity. When inferior species are granted opportunities beyond their capabilities, the results damage everyone involved." He turned toward Katie with eyes that blazed with cold light. "The human species requested inclusion in our educational programs. They claim to possess intelligence comparable to established galactic civilizations. Today's exercise has revealed the truth of these claims." Katie stood frozen as hundreds of alien students watched her public humiliation. She could see Jake in the crowd, his face twisted with anger and helplessness. The other human students looked away, unable to watch their friend's degradation. "There is an ancient Zephyrian tradition," Veltar continued, "used to restore proper order when natural hierarchy has been disrupted. The inferior must acknowledge their place through ritual submission." The commander's meaning became clear as he explained the ceremony. Katie would kneel in the center of the circle and touch her forehead to the stone floor. This gesture would symbolize human acceptance of their species' limitations and their gratitude for being allowed to study among their betters. "You will demonstrate the traditional posture of submission," Veltar commanded. "Kneel and press your face to the ground. Hold this position until I grant permission to rise." The great hall fell completely silent. Katie could hear her own heartbeat and the distant hum of the station's machinery. Every alien in the room waited to see if she would comply with this ultimate humiliation. She thought about her family back on Earth, who had been so proud when she was selected for the program. She thought about human children who might dream of reaching the stars someday. She thought about the other human students watching her now, wondering if their species would ever earn respect among the galaxy's civilizations. Slowly, Katie began to lower herself toward the stone floor. Her knees bent as she prepared to kneel before the alien commander. The weight of failure and shame pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden, but just as her knees touched the cold stone, a familiar voice cut through the silence of the great hall. "She kneels to no one." Jake Morrison pushed through the crowd of alien students without caring who he knocked aside. His friend was kneeling on cold stone while hundreds of creatures watched her humiliation. Every step toward the center of the hall made his anger burn hotter. For weeks he had watched Katie suffer under constant criticism and impossible demands. He had seen her collapse from exhaustion while aliens refused to help. He had listened to instructors call humans primitive and worthless. Jake had endured it all because fighting back would mean the end of human participation in the galaxy's most advanced school. But this was different. This was not education or even cruel teaching methods. This was pure cruelty designed to break his friend's spirit. Jake would not stand by and watch it happen. "She kneels to no one," he said again, louder this time. Commander Veltar turned toward the approaching human with surprise that quickly changed to rage. "You dare interrupt a formal ceremony? Return to your place immediately." Jake stopped at the edge of the ceremonial circle. Katie looked up at him with wide eyes, still on her knees but no longer moving toward the floor. Around them, the great hall buzzed with shocked whispers as aliens realized what was happening. "Get up, Katie," Jake said firmly. "You don't owe these people anything." "The human will complete the ritual," Veltar declared, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "And you will return to the crowd before I have you removed from this station permanently." Jake stepped into the circle instead. "Touch her again and find out what happens." The threat hung in the air between them. Commander Veltar stood nearly 8 feet tall, his crystalline body reflecting the overhead lights in sharp patterns. Jake was 6 feet of solid muscle, but he looked small and fragile next to the towering alien. The size difference made Jake's challenge seem foolish and desperate, but there was something in the human's eyes that gave Veltar pause. Jake was not backing down or showing fear. He stood perfectly still, waiting for the alien to make a move. This was not the behavior Veltar expected from an inferior species. "You forget your place," the commander said, trying to reassert control. "Humans are guests here by the grace of superior civilizations. That grace can be withdrawn. Then withdraw it, Jake replied. Send us home. But Katie gets up off that floor first. Veltar's crystalline features shifted into something that might have been a smile. I see the problem now. Humans lack the intelligence to understand consequences. Perhaps a physical demonstration will educate your primitive mind. The alien reached toward Katie with one long arm, intending to force her back down to the kneeling position. His movements were confident and controlled. Zephyrians were not physically powerful by galactic standards, but their crystalline structure was incredibly dense and hard. No soft carbon-based creature could resist their strength. Jake moved faster than anyone expected. He caught Veltar's arm before it could reach Katie and held it firmly in place. I warned you. For a moment, Commander and human were locked in a silent struggle. Veltar pushed forward with steady pressure, expecting to brush aside the human's grip like a minor annoyance. Jake held his ground, muscles straining but refusing to give way. The alien students watching from the crowd began to murmur in confusion. This was not how physics was supposed to work. Humans were weak creatures with brittle bones and limited strength. A Zephyrian should be able to overpower any human without effort, but Jake was not moving. His earth-forged bones and muscles, built under gravity 3 times stronger than Kepler Station's artificial environment, were holding firm against the alien's pressure. Veltar's confident expression began to change as he realized the human was actually resisting him. Impossible, Veltar muttered, applying more force. Jake felt the increased pressure but did not budge. Growing up on Earth had given him advantages that no alien could understand. His skeleton was designed to carry weight and absorb impact under crushing gravity. His muscles were built for constant resistance against a planet that tried to pull everything toward its core. Every day of his life had been strength training compared to the comfortable artificial environments where most galactic species lived. Veltar's frustration boiled over into rage. He pulled his arm back and then drove it forward with all his strength, intending to shatter the human's grip and send Jake flying across the ceremonial circle. The blow would crush any normal creature's bones and end this embarrassing resistance. The impact came with a sound like breaking glass. But it was not Jake's bones that broke. Veltar's crystalline arm, evolved for precision and delicate manipulation in low-gravity environments, shattered against the dense human skeleton it struck. Fragments of blue crystal scattered across the stone floor as the alien commander screamed in shock and agony. The great hall fell into stunned silence. Hundreds of alien students stared at the impossible scene before them. The mighty Commander Veltar, representative of one of the galaxy's most advanced species, was on his knees clutching the broken remains of his arm. Standing over him was a human who had not even been hurt by the attack. Jake looked down at his own hand, surprised to find it completely undamaged. He had felt the impact, but his bones had absorbed it easily. What would have been a devastating blow to most species was just a minor shock to a creature built for Earth's harsh environment. Katie rose to her feet, staring at the broken crystal scattered around Jake's shoes. She had never seen anything like this. Neither had anyone else in the hall. For the first time since humans arrived at Kepler Station, the aliens were seeing them as something other than weak primitives. Medical assistance to the Great Hall immediately, called one of the instructors. Commander Veltar requires emergency treatment. Several aliens rushed toward the injured Zephyrian, but they gave Jake a wide berth. They had just watched him destroy their commander's arm without breaking a sweat. None of them wanted to test whether he could do it again. Jake helped Katie move away from the ceremonial circle as medical staff surrounded Veltar. The commander was making high-pitched sounds that might have been Zephyrian cursing, but Jake did not care enough to ask for translation. Are you hurt? Katie asked, examining Jake's hand for damage. I'm fine, Jake replied, flexing his fingers. Are you okay? Katie nodded, though she still looked shaken by everything that had happened. Around them, alien students were backing away and talking in excited whispers. Some looked scared. Others seemed fascinated. All of them were staring at the humans with new eyes. The other human students pushed through the crowd to reach their friends. Tom Bradley looked amazed and terrified at the same time. Jake, what did you just do? Protected my friend, Jake answered simply. But even as he said it, Jake knew this moment would change everything. For better or worse, humans would never again be seen as harmless primitives. The galaxy had just learned that Earth's children carried hidden strength in their bones and blood. How the aliens chose to respond to that knowledge would determine humanity's future among the stars. Commander Veltar was carried away on a medical stretcher, still clutching his shattered arm. As he passed Jake, their eyes met for a brief moment. The alien's gaze held pain, rage, and something else that Jake had never seen there before. Fear. The great hall slowly emptied as students returned to their dormitories, but the whispered conversations and shocked glances continued. Word of what had happened would spread throughout Kepler Station within hours. By morning, every alien in the galaxy would know that humans were not as weak as they appeared. Jake and Katie walked back to their quarters in silence, surrounded by their fellow humans, but feeling very alone. They had no idea what consequences would follow from this confrontation. All they knew was that there was no going back to the way things were before. The galaxy had seen human strength. Now they would learn what humans did with it. News of the incident in the Great Hall spread through Kepler Station faster than Jake had expected. By the next morning, every alien student knew that a human had broken Commander Veltar's arm with his bare hands. The story grew with each telling. Some versions claimed Jake had lifted the massive Zephyrian over his head. Others said he had shattered crystal walls with his fists. The truth was strange enough without exaggeration. For the first time in galactic history, a member of a primitive species had physically overpowered one of the advanced races. The implications made everyone uncomfortable. 3 days after the confrontation, Jake was summoned to meet with the station's governing council. Katie insisted on coming with him. They walked through hallways that felt different now. Alien students still stared, but the looks had changed from contempt to wary curiosity. Some creatures actually stepped aside to let the humans pass. The council chamber was a circular room with seats arranged in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from a dozen species sat in judgment, their various forms creating a bizarre assembly. The Zephyrian delegate was not Veltar, who remained in the medical bay with his arm sealed in some kind of crystal cast. Jake Morrison, said the lead counselor, a floating jellyfish-like being called a Nethiarch. You stand accused of assault against a station instructor. How do you respond to these charges? Jake had prepared for this moment. I was protecting my friend from abuse. Commander Veltar was forcing her to perform a humiliation ritual that had nothing to do with education. The ritual of submission is a legitimate cultural practice, replied the Zephyrian delegate, a female named Silvera. Humans agreed to follow station customs when they enrolled here. Nowhere in our enrollment agreement did it mention forced submission ceremonies, Katie interjected. I've read every document. That ritual was Veltar's personal invention. This statement caused stirring among the council members. Several species began checking their own records on portable devices. The Threx delegate, an insect-like creature with compound eyes, spoke first. The human is correct, it buzzed in mechanical tones. Station customs do not include submission rituals. This appears to have been an unauthorized addition to standard procedures. The Melikari representative, resembling a walking tree with silver bark, added its voice to the discussion. My species has also noted concerning patterns in human student treatment. Our observations suggest systematic discrimination rather than normal educational challenges. Jake and Katie exchanged surprised glances. They had not expected support from alien species. But as the discussion continued, more representatives spoke up about problems they had witnessed. The Carillion delegate, a 6-armed humanoid with blue skin, described how human students were given impossible assignments while alien students received advance notice of test topics. The Volanti representative, a creature made of living energy, reported that human quarters were deliberately placed in the oldest, least maintained section of the station. These observations suggest a pattern of harassment, concluded the Nethiarch council leader. Such behavior violates the educational principles upon which this institution was founded. Silvera tried to defend her species' actions. Zephyrians have led galactic education for millennia. Our methods are proven effective. If humans cannot adapt to proper standards, perhaps they should return to their primitive world. Primitive? Interrupted the Melikari representative. The human female demonstrates linguistic abilities that surpass most established species. The male solved engineering problems that have challenged our best minds for decades. Lucky guesses and accidental success. Silvera dismissed. Then explain yesterday's incident, said the Carillion delegate. How does a primitive creature overpower an advanced Zephyrian? The question hung in the air without answer. No one in the galaxy had expected humans to possess hidden physical advantages. The revelation forced everyone to reconsider their assumptions about Earth's species. Jake decided to provide some context. Humans evolved on a high-gravity world with dangerous predators and harsh weather. Our bodies adapted to survive conditions that would crush most aliens. We're not primitive, we're just different. Over the following days, a formal investigation revealed the full scope of anti-human discrimination at Kepler Station. Veltar had been leading a systematic campaign to force human students to quit the program. He had pressured other instructors to fail human assignments regardless of quality. He had arranged for human dormitories to receive substandard food and inadequate heating. The investigation also uncovered Veltar's sabotage of Katie's diplomatic simulation. Several witnesses came forward to testify that Zephyrian students had been instructed to disrupt human participation in group projects. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Public revelation of this discrimination triggered protests from species across the galaxy. Many had suspected that Zephyrian supremacist attitudes were affecting education, but no one had proof until now. The scandal forced major changes in how Kepler Station operated. Commander Veltar was dismissed from his position and banned from all educational institutions. New policies were implemented to prevent discrimination based on species origin. Most importantly, the Governing Council established independent monitoring systems to ensure fair treatment for all students. Katie found herself at the center of these changes. Her linguistic skills made her valuable as a translator and cultural mediator. She helped develop new communication protocols that allowed different species to understand each other better. Alien students who had previously ignored her began seeking her help with language problems. Jake's engineering insights proved equally valuable. His practical approach to problem-solving complemented the theoretical knowledge of other species. He began working on collaborative projects that combined human intuition with alien technology. Several of his innovations were adopted for use throughout the station. The other human students benefited from these developments as well. Without constant harassment and impossible standards, they began demonstrating their true capabilities. Tom Bradley excelled in quantum mathematics once he received proper instruction. Lisa Chen showed remarkable talent for biological sciences. Each human student found areas where their unique perspective provided advantages. By the end of their first year, the human students were no longer curiosities or targets of discrimination. They had earned respect through hard work and proven ability. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy that intelligence and capability came in many different forms. Katie and Jake graduated with honors after 2 years of intensive study. Their final projects were showcased to representatives from across known space. Katie had developed a universal translation system that could handle previously incompatible language structures. Jake had designed new safety systems that made space travel safer for all species. The graduation ceremony took place in the same great hall where Veltar had tried to humiliate Katie. This time, she stood proudly on the ceremonial platform while aliens from dozens of worlds applauded her achievements. Jake stood beside her, his presence a reminder of the strength humans could show when defending what mattered to them. As they prepared to return to Earth, Katie and Jake carried with them more than just advanced education. They brought proof that humans could succeed among the stars if given fair opportunity. They also brought new relationships with alien species who now saw Earth as a valuable partner rather than a primitive. Curiosity, the transport ship that took them home, was very different from the one that had brought them to Kepler Station. This time, alien passengers treated them as equals. Several species had already requested human students for their own educational programs. Earth was no longer begging for inclusion in galactic civilization. Other worlds were asking for human participation. Katie spent the journey home working on translation protocols for first contact situations. Jake designed communication systems that would let Earth stay connected with its new alien allies. Both of them prepared for their new roles as ambassadors between worlds. When their ship finally approached Earth's blue skies, Katie felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with personal achievement. Humans had faced the ultimate test of worthiness among advanced civilizations. They had been dismissed, discriminated against, and humiliated, but they had endured, adapted, and ultimately earned their place among the stars. The title that had started their journey now made perfect sense: An alien instructor had tried to force human submission, but his own structure had failed first. It was a fitting metaphor for humanity's experience in the galaxy. Those who underestimated human strength would discover their own weaknesses in the process. Earth's children were no longer primitive visitors in an advanced civilization. They were full partners in a galactic community that was richer for their inclusion.